Good morning, everyone. We're going to get going in just a second here. Just waiting for our Facebook Live to kick in, and we are now live on Facebook. So good morning, everyone. I'm Paul Markle, Interim Executive Director of the Barrie Chamber of Commerce, and I'd like to thank you for joining us today for our workshop, Calibrating Your Business for Success Using the 5 Questions of Strategic Planning. Through these past few months of uncertainty, business owners have been incredibly creative in adapting to the global situation, reacting quickly to continue operations safely amidst new restrictions. With the landscape constantly evolving, decisions are often led by instinct in the moment, but may not be sustainable in the long term. So as we move forward towards reopening and full reopening, we may be considering adjusting our business model, transitioning our products or services, or targeting new markets we've never considered before. Changes of this magnitude need solid strategy behind them to guide future decision-making, to ensure that objectives are clear, and to reduce the stress caused by operating solely in survival mode. So our speaker this morning is Heather Bairsto, CEO and Principal Consultant Coach of Workfactors. Heather is an accomplished business strategist and passionate leadership coach. She began her career pushing a mail cart in the interior public service. She had no idea at the time that years later she would partner with heads of companies, develop their winning business strategies, transform their leadership capacity. So before we begin, I'd like to let you know that after the presentation, we will have a quick Q&A session. So if you want to submit a question, please go to the Q&A at the bottom of your screen and add your question in there. I will read the questions before our speaker and allow her to answer them. And we're hoping to have a bit of a conversation on the strategy piece. There is a set presentation. And then we'll expand on that further once everything goes. So with that said, Heather, please begin.
Okay, thanks, Paul. And I'm gonna flip my screen. So hello, everybody. It's nice to be with the community today. I do have a prepared presentation, as Paul mentioned. And in that, I will be a little bit organic as I go along, but I wanna make sure that I cover off the 5 questions and some specific tools that I think are really necessary for businesses as we move through uncertainty and unpredictability as we take our next steps. So I will do this and share. And there we go. So as I said, thank you so much for having me with you today. It's something, as Paul mentioned in my introduction, I never really thought I would be out and about doing. If you'd asked me this 10 years ago, I wouldn't have said that this is where I would be, but I'm so incredibly grateful for the journey that I've had thus far in my career that has brought me to a place of understanding how to create strategies for organizations, how to look at different information that goes into building winning strategies, and really looking at the courage that's required inside of leadership to be able to drive not only an organization forward, but really being able to drive a lot of our community interests forward. So that is who I am. That is who Paul introduced. The starting as a mail cart, why that's relevant for me is one of those places in which many of us have along our journey. What we were doing then and what we end up doing in our career are never really sort of a linear space. And that is true for me as well. The benefit that I got from starting with pushing a mail cart, and I literally was the one pushing the buggy on a temporary contract, is that I learned an awful lot about the issues that were happening. And I learned from a lot of excellent colleagues how to understand issues in a way that were starting to become trends that then became realities. And so my teeth were cut very early on in my career about looking at things externally and really weighing out what are the things that we need to be looking at and what are the things that we can let go. Because not everything is a trend. Not one newspaper makes something a trend. And so my journey through there really set me into a space to then work with larger organizations to put them in a 3 to 5 year focus as to where it is they were needing to go, how to harness their resources to bring them forward, and how to monitor on a regular basis that the direction that they were attempting to go is the direction in which they were actually going. So what we're going to do today is, these are the 4 outcomes that we want to have It'll be a little bit organic, as I said, as we go. We want to address what are the types of planning that go on in business, because I know a fair amount of you are doing a lot of planning and had pre-pandemic, and what are the elements of strategic planning that you might want to be inserting into the work that you're doing now. And we'll do that by looking at the 5 questions of strategic planning, and do that by looking at the 5-box strategic planning blueprint that can help you along the way. And I'll also be talking about what it is that I've had to do in order to be able to reimagine my business. And I'll talk a little bit about what that's looked like for me pre and during, and what that could look like for me post. And we definitely want to save enough time to be able to do the participant roundtable. A lot of learning comes from the community, and we want to be sure to open that up so that we can learn not only from myself and from the chamber, but also from each other inside of our community. So I'm not alone, I know, in that what we experienced as we hit the space in February, things were still moving along at quite a pace. We were all traveling our directions. There was quite a speed going on inside of our economy, inside of our society, inside of all of the different things that were happening politically for us. And we were all just merrily going along our way. It didn't mean that we didn't have struggles inside of our business. But those we understood. There wasn't an uncertainty of what was going on inside. And then March happened, and we were all taken into our homes, and we were all taken out of our businesses, and we moved into a place which feels strangely like a very off-road detour that we are on, and have come to learn that this detour isn't something that is going to be a slow bushwhacking for all of us. We're not just going to all of a sudden pop back onto that busy highway. But that we have to go slower, figure things out with a little bit more discernment as to what that road ahead is going to look like, and how might we be able to join some type of a highway down the road, and what is that highway going to look like? What is it that we want it to look like? What is it that we need it to look like? We have been told by many different authorities that what things will look like when pandemic is complete is very different than what things have been looking like pre and even during. A lot of folks are referring to this as the new normal. And from a transition management standpoint, certainly we are not in new normal. We are in this very interesting in-between stage where we'll have different starts and stops as we move forward and move towards that ultimate place, which is either inoculation for all or some measure of herd immunity or combination. And so we continue to live with the ambiguity of what these next couple of years are looking like. So to put that into perspective, and I think to give a bit of humility in terms of there's what it is that I know and what it is that I teach and what we provide through our company and how we used to do it. And there's what it is that I've had to apply to myself and really take myself through the process that I'm speaking to you about today, and continue to take myself and my company through that process. So Workfactors is a strategic business advisory company, and what we do really focuses on strategy, leadership, and results. We really look at working with companies to be able to figure out where it is they're trying to go, what's their vision, mission, values, what is the activities then that need to get them there, and how do you align everybody to be able to be rowing in that same direction. How we've done that business model in the past has been, as you can see in these pictures, very highly engaged out inside with the energy inside of organizations or senior executive teams, really leading the process, sharing in that collaborative conversation, and feeding off of one another's ideas. And so that came to an abrupt change and has looked more like this for ourselves inside of Workfactors and being a service provider. And what you're looking at here is our screens of Zoom inside of the professional communities that I'm engaged with. So there's not only the coaching and consulting conversations that we're having, there's also looking at the technology that where we once were in big conference center rooms, how do we do that again? And how do we do that in a virtual world, knowing that we need to be able to continue the deep learning that happens for organizations even more now than ever about what their systems look like and how we can help them improve their systems and get themselves sometimes out of their own way towards their excellent visions and desires for their community. So that's an abrupt switch. as many of us as had, and not necessarily our services are ones that are going to be able to come back out immediately into that broader space of participating. And so figuring it out from an online. So that's been a business model process that I've been having to go through with my strategic alliances to be able to sort out how best are we going to be able to do this without an erosion of any of the value that we provide, any of the learning not hitting the screen that it is that we set out to do. So in that, had to look at ourselves, again, from the place of what is the type of business planning that we need to be doing now. Most businesses do a fair number of pieces inside of the two towards the right-hand side, the business planning and the operations planning, which is in and around your 1 to 3 year plan, really looks at what your day-to-day activities are, what your financials look like, and where it is that you're looking to be able to expand into markets in a very short period of time. On the other end of the scale is your long-range planning, which is very much in use in larger organizations. It's that 20 to 30 year plan. One of the organizations I worked with was a 40-year plan. And it really is that utopia. It's really looking at what is that ideal place that we would like to be many decades down the road. And then strategic planning fits into that place that jockeys between that long range vision and that yearly process of doing the day-to-day. And so I want to highlight that strategic planning, a misconception is that it's a planning process that is meant only for larger organizations. And there could be nothing that's further from the truth, particularly in and around businesses that are looking to, if not thrive, that are looking at presently being able to survive. Its focus is very much about looking at the unpredictability that is life in general. And particularly in situations like what we're finding ourselves now. So it is a continuous structured process that does consider a range of futures. It looks at a lot of internal and external that I'm going to get at with you in a moment. And it really harnesses how to focus all of the available resources, whether that's your financial, your human, your assets, to be able to drive the organization forward. It's built with continuous review and continuous improvement inside, and which is why I feel that there are many components, if not the entire process, is beneficial for businesses to be looking at as we take our next steps together during pandemic. A lot of people do consider it to be one of those processes where we're going to be doing some navel gazing, and it can feel like that when times are good. It can seem like, oh, here we go again. We're going to be doing a lot of data gathering in and around what's going on inside of us, in and around what's going on outside of us. We're going to theme that. We're going to look at that. And there can be a lot of animosity toward the planning process because it does take a little bit of time, depending on the size of your organization and the degree of engagement in which you want to be doing the process. However, in times of challenge, the navel gazing cannot be underestimated. The amount of data that needs to be looked at for every business right now to be able to see where calibration needs to happen and where it doesn't, because there is a fair amount going on in our businesses that you will see that doesn't need to change. And so being able to sort of look at the overall and say, if this is where I have my 5 minutes of time or my $5 to spend, this is where it's going to be the best spent because I've taken a look at everywhere in my business and I know where it is that I need to focus, as opposed to feeling overwhelmed about focusing on the whole. So strategic planning process is really designed to be able to take those loop-de-loops that go on from trying to live the day-to-day and block that down to make it more of a linear drive towards the future by controlling best you can the planning of the environmental factors that are affecting our businesses. It's not a linear process that the planning is. It is iterative. It builds from information to information, but it does very much reduce the going off into too many fields and trying to get back onto the highway a little bit quicker, a little bit faster. So what we're going to work with today is the 5-box strategic plan blueprint. And so before we get into that, I just want to focus your attention here on the black boxes. Those are the 5 questions of strategic planning. And so we start at the bottom, which is box 1, what business are we in and how are we doing? Box 2, what's happening around us? Box 3, is there a better place for us to be? And box 4, how do we get there? And box 5, how will we know that we've arrived? So those are your black boxes. So you think about an airplane, that's the place we go after to try and look at where is all the data, how do we know what really went on in that flight? That's what these black boxes do for your business, is really looking at how are you doing in the flight of your business. The gray boxes, where you can see attached to each of those 5 boxes, are your inputs towards that black box. So your first box there has your organizational assessment. Box 2 is your environmental scanning. Box 3 has scenario planning. Box 4 has vision, mission, goals. And box 5 has your key performance indicators. The red boxes are your outputs of that work. So the first 2 boxes, they're done. They have different focuses that I'll show you, but their yield is one that puts those 2 data points together, which is in and around your SWOT analysis, your strengths, your weaknesses, your opportunities, and your threats. That forms a big portion of your foundation that takes you into box 3, in which you will then work on scenario planning to drive your output through box 3, which is your strategic direction. From your strategic direction, that moves into box 4, where you start to really look at what are all of the different ways in which we need to be working with our business model to take us to where we want to go. That output from box 4 becomes your action plan. That's where your rubber is going to hit your road. And that work then moves into the deciding of how do we know that we've gotten there. And that's your key performance indicators, which can be both quantitative and qualitative. And that's really what you're going to be looking at your dials on a regular basis to see where it is that you're going. And all of that adds up into that red box that you're looking for, which is your strategic plan. So this is a blueprint that we use inside of our program, a standalone program in and of itself, which is Leader as Navigator. It's also a program that we use inside of our larger programming, which is Fearless Leadership Formula. And so we'll take you through what this is and what would be the pieces that you can say to yourself, yes, I've got that. I don't need to be doing that part. Or maybe I do need to be doing that part a little bit differently or a little bit more in order to get a real handle on that area. So the first box is really about assessing the current condition of your business. And so it is very much about looking at why does your business exist? What do you do and for whom do you do it for? What are your key success factors? Do you have what it is that you need to succeed in the business? And really being able to size up inside of the organization, really what is going on, what's going well for you and what isn't going well for you. There are a few different means that you can use that will take you to the same end. Some people work from a place of key success factors. So really, what is it that I need to be good at in my business in order to be able to have the success we're looking for? There's the balanced scorecard approach, which looks at your finances and your operations, your people, and your customers. There's benchmarking, which compares yourself to others who are inside of the same industry as yourselves. And there's an organizational audit, which includes elements of looking at your culture as well as your leadership and your processes. So those are different means that if you were to do a Google search, you would be able to find any of those 4. And what that really looks at is how are you doing on the inside? And what I want to emphasize here is the work that's done inside of looking at the inside. It's really a leader's job to ask the right questions and, more importantly, to really listen to those that are working inside of the organization with you. It has been my experience with every company that I've worked with that the answers lie inside of the field. Those that are working most directly with the company, the customers and the clients and your suppliers have the highest degree of information that will be relevant for you to be able to intake into the process. The second box is the what's going on around us, and it's about understanding what's happening out there. And so that key component is about environmental scanning and is one of the critical components of being able to take unpredictability and drive it into a place of feeling a little bit more predictable. And so what goes on inside of environmental scanning is you have your business here at the center, and then you have your rings. So the rings closest to your business is your employees, your customers, your creditors, your competitors, your unions, if those are involved, your communities, your local level of government, and really having an understanding of what is going on with each one of those stakeholders and how what's taking place with them is positively or negatively influencing your business's ability to be able to move forward. The outer ring is looking at the broader environment. What's happening for us politically inside of any regulations, what's happening with our economy and the economic drivers there, what's happening socially, legally, any type of new legislation that's coming through that could have broad impact, environmental drivers, what's happening out literally in our environment, and technological drivers. And so, as many of us are feeling, there is definitely a sense of a lot of drive towards technology. And so there will be a fair amount of competition that's going to take place, that's already taking place inside of our technical windows. There is also a fair amount going on, as we know, inside of our economic drivers and how deep will we be going in terms of any type of recession and how temporary or how permanent, and how do we stave that off by doing really good planning. And then we have the added spaces in and around our social drivers as we watch what is happening in terms of human rights and different pieces that have come about during this time. And so the aim here with the environmental scanning is to be really, really honed at understanding what it is going on out there so that you can start to do the pieces of your scenario planning, which comes during the box 3 process. That requires a deep, deep listening to the outside world and having conversations with those that are in the know about those things. It's about being able to discern between fake news and real news, looking at things that are becoming trends, seeing the real data that's coming out in and around the fact that we have been getting socialized, that the new normal when we're through this is about more than 1 to 2 years away. And so being able to plan that space out and not looking at the news from a place of fear, but from a place of opportunity, really switching the mindset to be looking at what is it that you're learning, what is it that you're deducing is happening out there, and how does that work for or against the plans that you have, and therefore how would you adjust your plan. So the yields of box 1 and 2 are your SWOT analysis. So your internal assessment of how things are going on, your organizational assessment fits across the grid of your strengths and your weaknesses. So it's that space of what do we do well and where can we improve? And your environmental scanning results move into the opportunities and the threats and your external information. So what's changing in the environment that can help us, and what changes do we need to prepare for or guard for? Scenario planning, environmental scanning isn't something that it can't predict the future, and it can't change that the future is going to come. What it does do is it shines the light in all of the corners so that what we might not understand when it's happening to us, that we have a better leg up a little bit earlier on in the process because we've been watching. So the third box brings us to planning for change, and so that you can be positioned for success. And so this is where, with all of the information that comes from your internal assessment of what's happening in your business and the external understanding of where things are working for or against your business being able to succeed, is when you move into that place that says of scenario planning to be able to drive that strategic direction. It's in this box that you would be confirming your vision, your mission, and your values, which for most organizations hasn't changed. I know there's a lot of talk in the word of pivot, and I understand that. It's not a word that I use in strategy formulation because for me, it conjures up an image of needing to turn around and either do a 90-degree run or a full 180 run in the other direction. Whereas the wording that I prefer to use is adapting. The what of my business and the why of my business haven't changed. My values of being able to bring leaders up to the level that they can be successful with their companies and drive their companies to success, that hasn't changed. My mission of being able to educate and a means of being able to teach leaders how to fish, and therefore have the leaders then teach their leaders how to fish, that hasn't changed. My purpose hasn't changed. How I do that business now, where I used to be outside and need to be inside, that has changed tremendously. So the process of looking at the scenarios, and I want to posit that we have been given 3 scenarios, and it came from an interesting place, which is from the education sector, when the school boards were asked to plan for September in one of 3 scenarios and have plans for all 3, which is 1, we all get to come out and play, so all the kids can come to school with all of the different things that are happening to keep people safe. So there's that scenario. There's the scenario that nobody gets to come out to be able to play, and that schools stay online. And then there's the hybrid, which has some combination of both. And all of that with the space of being able to very quickly go back into isolation and handle anything that could come up in terms of an outbreak or a second wave. And so we have been given scenarios to be able to lens our business through. And so there doesn't need to be much more conjured up in and around those scenarios. It's really about now taking your business through the lenses of those scenarios. And does that then give you a big, medium, or small strategic change to what it is that you're doing? Are you needing to change the way that you're going to compete for your customers? Are you going to need to change your costs? Are you going to need to look at the types of products that you offer or the market to which you're offering them? Are you looking to need to look at the value that you provide for customers? Are you looking to change the way in which you deliver your services? So again, here it isn't about that it's all from scratch. It's more about the how. The how we deliver our businesses is what has changed radically, not the why. And a fair degree of the what we provide hasn't changed either. So the yield of box 3 then really positions you to be able to look at your business model. And that's what we've had to do at Workfactors as well. So what had been traditionally a out there face-to-face model, however, that was the how we were doing it. What we did, which was one-to-one, which was one to a group, and one to many, that hasn't changed for us. But not being out there in a face-to-face or being able to collect inside of a room or do large room facilitation, that has changed. And so that's required us to be able to pull out the business model canvas and take ourselves back through that process to say, well, how has the new how that I have to do this, how is that changing? Do I have new key partners? Do I have new key activities that I need to do? What are the channels that I need to be able to do that in? How is that changing my customer relationships? And has it changed any of the segments that I need to go after? And how is that affecting my revenue streams and my costs? So it really positions all of that input that comes from box 1 and 2, and doing the scenario planning really positions you to understand what type of business model you'll need to be taking yourselves with on the go ahead. And there could be a mix of business models that you might need to be doing and considering either on the temporary or possibly on the go forward. So I added these fellas in here because when we start to change our business model, particularly when we have employees, that does create a lot of angst, a lot of transition anxiety for our employees. And so as you're going through the process, it is very much recommended to include your employees where you can include them so that they aren't wondering where the business is trying to go, but more that you're including them with their information, with their ideas, and with their buy-in as they start to help you determine that business model and, more importantly, implement that business model for success. So box 4 is, again, taking all of that information and putting it through the next piece, which is about transforming those goals, the new goals that you have for your company, and putting them into your day-to-day activity. This is the rubber hitting the road. This is about translating the big vision into your objectives that then can be mapped into who needs to be doing what and when do we need to be delivering these. And so it's about setting out what is your strategic goal and what is that grid that you're going to put those in, so that you know, what was it that I have to do in year 1, year 2, year 3? What are my objectives, and who has the lead responsibility? So it's starting to get down into the actual tactics of what needs to take place and what are the foundational pieces that need to happen in your year 1 that then will drive you towards your year 2 and onward. This is very much where competitive advantage starts to show itself in terms of your business. It's where your objectives of being able to survive and thrive and dominate, if that's where you're looking to be, start to show up in terms of what are your many strategies that are going on inside of your goals. The yield of box 4 gives you your accountability framework for yourself and for everyone inside of your organization, big or small. It's really taking that objective that you just sorted out through your previous work and laying it out, putting it towards somebody who needs to lead it, putting down what are the key actions that need to be taken, what are the deadlines in order for it to be done, who has the responsibility, what resources are required, and your resources can be both your financial, it can be your human or your infrastructure, and what are your measures of achievement? How will you know that you've been able to achieve that particular task? What is it that says that that is done and that's taking you to that next place? This requires an incredible amount of growth mindset, particularly as we work to be doing things in new and different ways. And it really requires that place that says, even though we've always done it this way before, is what we've done this way before the one way that's going to work for us? Or how do we grow into and do some measure of fail forward in order to figure out what is going to be the best way for us? And this needs to be a top-down mindset by the leader across and down the entire organization of leaning into the new skills, leaning into the new way for success, and helping yourself and your employees be able to let go of how we did things and what it was before, and embrace the where we need to go and what it's going to look like for us as we move forward. So the final box, it really is the formulation of strategy plus leadership to get you your results. This is where you're going to look at how will we know we've arrived. And some of that will be quantitative and some of it will be qualitative. A big piece here is sorting out your key performance indicators. What are the KPIs that you need to be looking at that are aligned to your strategy? And so a fair amount of work that we've been doing is looking at what is our new dashboard going to be looking like and what is it that we need to measure. With moving online, there is a fair amount of work that needs to be looked at in terms of website visits, about click rates, all these different things that we knew nothing about before pandemic, but are on a learning curve straight up, and figuring it out with other experts, and also figuring it out by trial and error. Not everybody is going to adapt well to our new methods, and we need to be doing that deep customer dive to be able to understand what it is that they need and how might we be able to make sure that our very satisfied numbers stay in that very high level of happiness with our customers, and also a validation of the value in which we are providing. So some of your key performance indicators are going to travel along from your pre-pandemic plan, and some of them will be new, because if you're needing to be doing new things, they will need to be structured so that you know the measure that you need to be looking at that you got there. And so the yield of box 5 in the entire process is a strategic plan. So you can see the cover of ours here we have called metamorphosis. So while there is a lot that stayed the same, our why and our what, our how was pretty much blown out of the water in terms of being face-to-face, and now moving into an online educational, coaching, and consultative business. And so what our plan provides us, what the process for yourselves will provide you, is a 3 to 5 year plan, which really does fit inside nicely with navigating with a roadmap over the next couple of years of pandemic and a year or two beyond. It's a map that lets you confirm your vision, your mission, your values. You can be grounded your analysis fits inside of this plan that you can continually refer to and see your apples to apples comparisons. It's where you lay out your scenario planning that makes the decisions for the business models you chose and the rationale why. It also infuses itself with the business models that we have in terms of our operating models. One of the key places we recommend for all of the companies we work with is building in your multi-year budget, so that you have a one-stop shop of your plan, so that the front end of your strategic plan is all of the direction you're looking to go and all of the hows, and the back end of your plan is your yearly operating plans that are going to be able to facilitate, and therefore you'll know where to calibrate in your operating to meet your strategic goals, and where you'll be able to calibrate your strategic goals based on what is going on in your operating plan. So that leads us to that place of really setting leaders up to master uncertainty so that they can be successful. And if I can do anything but focus people on really the full strategic planning process is going to give you a very robust, very detailed plan of how to get from here to there. The three components that really need to be dealt with during uncertainty include excelling in environmental scanning. So PESTLE is our acronym. And that is, if you recall, in the environmental scanning, there was that big outer ring. PESTLE is short for what's going on politically for us as a nation, as a province, as a local government, what's happening with the economy, what's happening in our society, technology, legal, and environmental. It's just a quick handle to be able to give you that definition of what PESTLE is. It's that outer ring, that broader environment. It's really looking at your customer, and not so much only from the information that you might have inside of your customer relations management system, which is helpful, but customers' situation has changed considerably. If not the what they're buying, the how they're buying it. With so much moving on to online, there is a different decision-making process that goes on for people before they click that buy. And so there is a need to get more information, do some deep dive surveying with your customers if you haven't done that already, possibly even a little bit of online focus group to really get a handle on what is happening for them, what types of services is it that they need, and how do they need that to be given to them, and what value are they looking for in these different times. The same goes with suppliers. The customer-supplier business relationship is an ecosystem unto itself, and recalibrating one's business needs to have the input from the customer and what's happening with them, but also the supplier. Who are you relying on to be able to deliver the business that you deliver? And are they in a position of being able to deliver on time with the same quality? Where are they getting their supplies from, and has their supply chain disrupted, so that the recalibration process can happen across that ecosystem and that everybody's expectations are being managed. The second area is really exhausting that scenario planning. So it's taking the 2 to 3 to 4 scenarios and building plans for them so that you can see which is going to be the right business model or business models to be able to take you through what the scenarios are that they're positing for us, which is that everyone coming out to play, nobody coming out to play, or some type of hybrid, and that ability to be able to scramble back and close doors while we deal with any type of outbreak or second, third, or fourth wave, depending on what's in front of us. And the third and final, but not to be underestimated, is really as leaders is embodying a strategic mindset. Strategic thinking is one of the hardest to find skills out there in the market, and it's one that's very difficult to develop, but best to be developed on the job and with those that have achieved that type of success. It's a hardwired skill, but it starts with that space of being grounded in your own leadership. What is your comfort with ambiguity and dealing with complexity, your means of being able to manage your emotions, and the survival instincts that come into play that overtake our ability to be able to problem solve? What is your level of knowledge and technical expertise in your planning? Do you have what it is that you need? Do you know where to go to get what it is that you need if you don't have it? And really adopting that growth mindset to be able to lean into what is in front of you and work with what's there to be able to create the new and the different, which will invariably bring you to a level of success that you may not have been expecting. So the bottom line that sits there is that the leader sets the direction, and truly, more importantly, us as leaders, we set the tone of how our organizations, our businesses are going to move into planning ourselves for the future. So we are a community of many who are all trying to figure this out together. I want to emphasize again the need to recalibrate ourselves together. A lot of us are working with each other and need to sort out what is going to be that customer satisfaction space we can work with together, and what does that look like, of who do we have as suppliers who can be able to help us, and really working in our relationships to understand who needs our help to be able to help them recalibrate. And I don't just mean our help from Workfactors, but yourselves. You're all very connected inside of the community, and it's about that checking in on one another to see where it is that each other is at, because the goal is for us to all be successful together, because we are all in this together. And so I'm going to end my fire hosing of strategic planning to be able to take what's amounted to about 25-year career and fire hose that in about 20 some minutes. That's a feat unto itself. And I will turn it back over to Paul in the chamber to take us into some Q&As and see where it is that the group wants to go with some conversation.
Thanks, Heather. That was really well done. A lot of information there. You weren't kidding when you said fire hose. Wow. I've been involved in a lot of strategic planning sessions over the years, from nonprofits to my own business to service clubs, and the process is always pretty much the same. The biggest thing I find with them is making sure that you stay on top of them and that you continue to revisit them through that whole time frame and make adjustments as as your world kind of changes. Obviously, the pandemic creates that kind of an environment for a lot of our businesses, the chamber included. We focused in on a Workfactors plan as a as a reference point, which was great. The chamber is really going through that process itself right now as well, where we have a change in leadership within the doors, but the pandemic really changes the way that we have to look at doing business. It also just happened to be at the end of our last strategic plan, so this is really relevant for us. Don't have a lot of time for questions, but I'm gonna start going. We've got about 10 in the queue, and we'll start picking away at those ones. The first question in here is for scenario planning. How far into worst case should I be going? A lockdown was already beyond the worst I'd imagine for my business, so was completely unprepared. Have you adjusted your scenario planning recommendations for clients?
That's a great question. I think the lockdown really is the worst case scenario, because that's not how we've traditionally been doing our economy. So that is the worst case scenario we built for Workfactors, and one that I think, now that we've been through it the first time and know the degree of disruption that caused and how we were able to find interim places, that we can minimize that disruption if and when it happens again. So that's the worst case scenario that we took ourselves, and I think that is the worst case scenario for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the more prepared you are, a second or third wave, you wouldn't have a lot of those questions you do originally. It'll be easier to handle. It doesn't change the way that your sales come in or whether your doors stay open, but your mindset is a lot different, knowing that, hey, I can handle this. And that sometimes that planning is what's needed to set people's minds at ease. So from creating this scenario, you guys are obviously working offline, much like we are. We've sort of slowed our process down because we prefer to do this sort of an exercise together. So we've delayed that until we can do that again. But how do you recommend doing, setting this up when you're not in the same space?
Yeah, again, a great question, and I think that's where you can see the huge competition in technology that's already pushing envelopes. There is a fair amount of technology that can be used to bring groups together online and do real-time facilitation. So where we would normally be in a boardroom or a conference center with your company, we'll just use the chamber as an example, We can do that now online, where we still have the ability to be able to facilitate the process and do whiteboarding. Everybody has their own color of Post-it note that they can move around, and everybody can see where people's ideas are going. So the technology is already exists in a fair amount of ways, and it's very easy. So we've been playing with that as a means of making sure that the value of the activity isn't gone through using technology. In fact, we're actually finding it to be a little bit more enhanced, because people are getting that pause to be able to put their idea up. That doesn't necessarily happen when you're in a live group and you've got interrupters and people who like to be devil's advocate. It's allowing for actually those that are more quiet to put their ideas forward.
That's interesting. When you say that about the disruptors, or the process, sometimes if you get people with differing views, that view doesn't get across because it gets cut off by somebody else that may have a louder personality. So great point, and actually I think maybe something we'll consider here, to be honest with you. So through the pandemic, my goals have dropped by the wayside, and our focus has became purely survival. How do I shift my mindset back to goals and objectives now when I'm not sure if I'm even going to survive the next few months?
Yeah, I pause on that because I don't know that I have a ready example. I think most of us, and I speak for myself, have had to take that sober second thought. Now that we've been 4 months into it and the exhaustion has come off, it's about looking at how have you fared so far? What is it that you were able to do that has kind of kept you into this place right now where you can even consider what will be your next steps, and looking at what has been that success and how could that actually start to inform your new business model, and work with that place as a start. It would be my recommendation. There is a lot of fear for a great many of us about what this is going to look like, and so I say that with a tremendous amount of empathy, but at the same time, creativity. Entrepreneurs are incredibly creative, and there's more than likely things that you have done to get you to where you are standing right now that have been successful, that can be looked at in terms of, can those be built out a little bit further to create a little bit more success for where you're trying to go.
I often say to my staff that they need to slow down to speed up, in order to, so sometimes when you've got that crazy amount of anxiety about what's going on, you just stop the music, take a pause and, get your head straight, and in fact, or, focus more on what's important and what you need to get accomplished, whether that be cash flow. I mean, a lot of the time you're worried about all these other factors that mean nothing. You just need dollars in the door. So what can we do right now to take care of that? And that's a starting point, and maybe that will continue down the road. We got a comment from one of our attendees. Great seminar. Where do risk assessment and mitigation planning fit in?
So risk assessment and mitigation, they fit inside of your scenario planning. In the business processes, I refer to those as your pressures and risks. So they fit into that box 3 when you're choosing your strategic direction. That's when you're going to really want to be looking at the feasibility of the strategies that you're contemplating, the means of which you're going to be able to do it, how quickly is it going to take to be able to go up to speed. So it fits into that box 3, and it becomes an element of which you look at and weigh out truly the ability for you to deliver the strategic direction that you're planning.
Okay, that's good. Along the same lines, with nobody knowing what's upcoming in the next few months, I'm having a hard time coming with plans to address the issues that arise in various scenarios. Any tips on how I can refresh my brain, or suggestions of where to look for new ideas? Yeah. That's that brainstorming standpoint, and looking at all the different resources available to you, the library, the chamber, all those different things.
Yeah, and if I can offer too, I think a lot of what we do in our leadership programming is in and around managing ambiguity in terms of our own brain. Our brain neuroscientifically, we crave structure. We're looking for patterns. And when we can't find that, we move into that survival mode, which just floods our brain with all kinds of different stress cocktails. And what we want to do is bring that back to neutral so that we can get into problem solving. And so being able to do some of that space that says, you know, what is it that I don't know, and be okay with that for at least even a few minutes to say, what has got me curious about the situation that's in front of me, and being able to sort of move your mindset from a place, and again, I say that with all empathy, because I've had to reframe myself multiple times as a business owner and as a parent who's wondering what school's going to look like in September too. That space that says, you know, how can I calm my brain down? How can I look at what it is that I'm resisting and get that all out of my system, take me a few minutes to get that out of my system, then move into a place of curiosity. What's been kind of interesting about this? And then move into a place of what's kind of fantastic about this? What about myself or my business that I did not know before that I now know that's got me proud? And the chemical cocktail shifts considerably, and it moves you into a place in which you can look at problem solving. And so I would suggest, from a place of being able to look at new and different things, is first to maybe move to calm the brain so that it is open to being able to look at the new and the different from a problem solving perspective.
It's a very good point. Another question here that's kind of around the same thing, and I would say that it's probably an important step in the process. And it says, you said to involve the team in the process, but I don't want to panic them by thinking that we have no plan in place or at all, and that the work that we've been doing previously was for nothing. So what language can I use to keep them positive coming to the process to ensure that we have positive results? To be honest, I may need a bit of encouragement to get myself past these fears too. I've always found that the more you get your team involved and you download some of those problems, you know, it's that feeling of shedding something, but I think it does the opposite with your staff, and this is just my opinion. It gets them more involved. You know, they have some control over where things are going, where before they didn't. They were waiting on you or whatever the leadership is in the organization to set that direction, where if you give them a task to accomplish either in a group and individually, they take more ownership and they feel more involved.
Yeah, I agree, Paul. A lot of leaders, we absorb the problems in the organization and we suck them up, and we believe that we need to be the ones to solve them. But that's not why we hired all the great talent that we've hired. We hired them to be bringing us different perspectives. The key to fearless leadership is transparency. And the people who know that you don't have a plan are your employees. They talk about that, they wonder about that, they're curious about that. And there is absolutely nothing wrong. It's actually a demonstration of courage to come forward and say, you know what, guys, let's not pretend this isn't happening. Let's look at the buffet of what is all in front of us, and let's do that together so that we can plan ourselves together, because the goal is for us to all eat together. And it's the leader showing up into that place of humility and just respect for the talent that you've hired. You've done a lot of work to get the people that you have, and they would love to work on the plan with you, because for them, the more they're involved, the more they're going to be able to create some sustainability for themselves even down the line. So I would highly recommend moving into that place of courage and transparency.
Yep, you know what? It's amazing. I've been with the chamber for many years, but I've been in this role since the beginning of May. So the team already knew me, but they didn't know me necessarily from you know, being inside with me every day. And I'm no prince most of the time, but at any rate, what's really impressed me with my staff is their ability to adapt and skill sets that I didn't even know about, that I maybe should have or overlooked. I'm finding them. So it's great when that happens, and our dialogue is a lot more constructive when we start talking about even putting different plans together. We can disagree and agree and come to a resolution pretty quickly. So I think as we go through our next bit of strategic planning, we'll be involving the staff a lot more in that as well. Anyway, I hate to cut this short, but we've only got a couple of minutes left, and we want to respect everyone's time. So I'm going to finish this off. But thank you very much, Heather. You did a fantastic job. The content was amazing. Hopefully that's something that we can provide for our members later on.
Yeah.
And help them along through the process. But in closing, I'd like to thank you again for joining us and for the work that you're doing in your business every day. We urge every leader in our community to maintain their focus on slowing the pace of transmission of COVID-19, whatever stage of operations their business may currently be in. Barrie Chamber is here to help you through this. Please feel free to email or call if you need something more. We have a local PPE page on our website, and we're continuing to add new things into that as the days progress. We implore everyone to please shop local. We need more than now than ever to support our local businesses, whether it's in the form of takeout from a restaurant or a gift certificate to help business ride out the storm. Every little bit helps someone. And again, if you're buying from Skip the Dishes, go pick your food up. You know, if you let them deliver it, the restaurants are taking a hit. So as our province takes steps towards reopening, please ensure that you continue to follow social distancing requirements and take them seriously. The safety of our community is the responsibility of all of us collectively. With that, have a great afternoon, great rest of the week. Unfortunately, not a short week this week, but the weather's looking good. So make sure you get out and take some time to play. Have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you very, very much.
Oh, gotta find my